What's up, guys? Emily here with Chris Orozco, shadow integration specialist and coach. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah. And so please introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit more about you and the work you do. And then I'm going to share why I was so fascinated to have you on the call today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Like you said, my name is Chris Orozco. I have been teaching shadow integration for the last 8 years, and I've been practicing it on myself for the last 10. And I've kind of created my own framework with it. My approach is really intuitive. It's something that I've kind of created and pieced together over the last 10 years or so. And so I specifically wanted to look at shadow work in a way that is the most practical and easily understood and repeatable and accessible way that I possibly could, because it's such a complex and abstract concept that to try and explain it in a way that's accessible and practical is really kind of difficult to do. So I wanted to take something this important and make it so that everyone else could understand it. So I spent the last 10 years doing that, and it seems to have worked. So I'm very grateful that my approach does actually seem to work. And I'm helping people embrace parts of themselves that they would normally throw away. And that's what kind of shadow integration is. It's like all the parts of your personality that you wish you didn't have, and all the thoughts and emotions that you don't like, you end up pushing them away, and they go to this place called the shadow. And they're outside of your awareness. They're disconnected from your heart. They're disconnected from your values. They're disconnected from you, where they can cause a lot of problems. This is where like self-sabotage comes from. This is where a lot of romantic relationship issues come from, is these parts of ourselves that we have forgotten about, banished back to the shadow. And so I help people reintegrate those parts into their minds and into their lives in healthy ways. So instead of these little saboteurs, they have parts of themselves that can help them rather than hinder them.
I love that. I love that. So my audience is men, single men who are looking for love.
Right.
And so the reason why I wanted to invite you to join us today is because you posted something on Facebook that totally hit me right in the heart. And I resonated a lot personally with what you shared, and I want to dive into it. And then I would love to explore how that maybe relates to the things that single men experience, not just even single men, but like in relationship, and how the shadow self can contribute to sabotage in like cheating, infidelity, or even just the thought of that. But just so the audience knows what the heck we're talking about, I'm going to read this post that you wrote, which I thought was brilliant, so that they kind of have more understanding. And then I would love to dive into it with you. Cool.
Wonderful. I'm ready.
All right. So this was the image that caught my attention, right? It's the guy with the girl looking at the other girl, and the fact that you labeled it like healthy, loving relationship, but the person is still kind of got attention on somebody else. That caught my attention. And I feel like I resonate with that in both ways, like being both the girl in the relationship and then also being, on the other side of that. So this is what you said. This used to be me, constantly torn between the sex I really wanted to be having and the kind of love that was actually good for me. And it turns out it's a very common dynamic. You ditch the one who treats you like royalty to go fuck the one who makes you hate your life. Funny, right? But why is this? Well, most people don't have their sexuality integrated into their hearts. They're usually at odds with each other. So you end up attracting and being attracted to people who have similar splits. I totally relate to this. I thought it was so interesting. There will be people who developed their sexuality more than their hearts, and people who develop their hearts more than their sexuality. One turns you on, the other makes you feel safe. But picking one or the other will always be unsatisfying to whichever part gets left out. You'll feel safe but bored, or excited but suffering. So the real question is, what's keeping them separate? What's keeping you from unleashing your raw sexuality around someone you love? For me, it was shame. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, which taught me to be ashamed of my sexuality. And that shame in turn gave birth to some desires I couldn't share with the good girls. It was only the bad girls interested in doing that shit. I had both desires fractured in my mind, so I only attracted partners with a similar split, as within, so without, and all that. But the beauty of that is, if you can integrate both drives within yourself, make peace with your desires, lovingly stand in who you are, you can be whole. You become attracted to those, or attractive to those who are whole, and you become attracted to wholeness. The toxic shit becomes less interesting, and you find healthy ways to get exactly what you want with people who don't make you hate yourself. You'll be safe and satisfied. Well said.
Thank you very much.
Like, I don't even know how you articulated that, but yes, I totally relate to that. So tell me a little bit more about how people who maybe resonate with that message can help to integrate their sexuality and have the safe love that's also like explosive in the bedroom.
Totally, totally, yeah. And so, like, I kind of noticed this split because I would always kind of joke with my friends. It's like, yeah, there's the girls that I have sex with, and then there's the girls that I date. And they were usually completely different, like not like each other at all. The ones that really turned me on were not the ones that I would get into relationships with, and the ones that I got into relationships with were not the ones that really turned me on. And I am the type of person where I cannot stand for parts of me to be unsatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a part of me that's like, hey, this could be better, like, and I'm constantly looking out for something else, like that just doesn't sit right for me. And so I was like, all right, why is this happening? What's going on? And then that's when I realized that, okay, the things that I want to do with the bad girls, I'm not comfortable looking at the good girls as if they'd be okay with that and want that.
Mm.
And all the things that the good girls give me, the safety and the love and the connection and the intimacy, I don't want that from the bad girls because I know that they would just use it against me and it would just create a mess and all of this stuff would just not be any good. So I was like, okay, so there's parts of me that make me feel safe here, and there's other parts of me that make me feel safe here. And so if it's split externally, that must mean that it's split internally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked myself, like, why would I have that split? And like I said in the post, it's about shame. So once I realized that it was possible to integrate them and all I needed to do was make peace with the shame, then all of a sudden, saying the things that I wanted to do with the good girls didn't bring up shame anymore. It didn't make me feel like a bad guy. I could suddenly find the good girls that wanted to do the bad things. And oddly enough, the bad girls stopped being attractive to me at all.
Oh.
They weren't interesting to me anymore because I could get what I wanted from the good girls in a healthy way that made me feel good. So the bad ones are just like, yeah, okay, great. I guess that's fine, but I can get the healthy version of that. So maybe just stay over there.
So what does that look like when you're bringing that into that healthy relationship? Is it like, I like this, would you be willing to try this?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what it is. It's getting in connection with who you are as a person, what you really want, and like really being honest, because that's where a lot of like guys in particular can fall short, especially because there's so much shame involved. That to really articulate what you really want, like if you had, I don't want to say let's say you had a robot, where you could program this robot to just like do whatever you wanted and nobody would know, nobody would look, you could be totally private. What would you really want to do? And then like, how does that make you feel to try and articulate that to someone that you like and are attracted to? If it brings up shame, then okay, fair enough. All you have to do is make peace with that shame and realize that it doesn't really make sense in this environment because you're kind of looking at these women as if like they don't like sex, and that's not really fair. It's not fair, that's not accurate, and you're depriving them of experiences that would really satisfy them, some of which they may not even have tried before, some of which they could be open to trying, and you could be the one to open them to this whole new world of pleasure and satisfaction, and which is a very fun role to play. So when you can make peace with the shame and you can start to get it out, you start to realize that it's just, yeah, okay, I want what I want and I like what I like. And so I'm going to connect with people that like what I like. And I'm going to let everyone else just sort themselves out. So it's like, great, this is who I am. This is what I want. You want to play that game with me? And sometimes you'll get like a no, worst case scenario, you get like, oh, you like that? Like, okay, maybe. And it's not that big of a deal because it's like, great, you weren't going to do what I wanted to do anyway. And then sometimes you'll get like, oh, well, I've been kind of curious about that, but I've never tried it, blah, blah, blah. And then so you get to kind of co-experiment. But yeah, the core of it really is getting clear on what you want, clearing out any emotions that stop you from being fully comfortable with that, and then articulating it to the people that you want to have those experiences with.
Oh, that's interesting. And so can you walk me through a little bit of like how that works, like with the work that you do to help people clear that out?
Yeah, totally. So basically, I kind of look at it as shame is the most common one. Shame and fear are the things that really get in guys' ways when it comes to this sort of thing. You don't want to be the creep. You don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to be, there's certain things you don't want to be seen as and certain things you don't want to be labeled as. And, for good reason, culture has taken some shifts that needed to be taken. And there was guys just totally out of pocket for way too long. And so now we have some things that we need to be kind of culturally aware of as men And unfortunately, too many of us have overcompensated by shutting down more than we should have and leaving out the raw stuff that is actually really attractive to the women that we want to be with. So what I help guys do is the shame is one thing, but it's also you have to pinpoint what specifically you don't want to be seen as. And for most guys, it's either going to be the bad guy or the creep. Those are the two things we don't really want to be seen as. And so for each individual, you need to pinpoint what you're afraid of being seen as and why you don't want to be seen as that. Like if you don't want to be seen as the bad guy, it's like, well, why not? Well, if I'm seen as the bad guy, then I'll feel a lot of shame and I'll feel a lot of guilt and I'll think that I don't deserve certain things and blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, let's get clear on that. And then let's help you make peace with the fact that inside, part of you already thinks you're a creep, or part of you already thinks that you're a bad guy. Like, can you make peace with the part of you that already believes that? Because if you didn't already believe it, you wouldn't be afraid. Well, just so here's what I do. I have people just say it. Once we pinpoint specifically what they're afraid of, then they'll just say, I'll have them say like, I'm a creep, or I'm an asshole, or I'm the insensitive misogynist, or whatever it is that specifically goes through their head. And then I have them say it out loud, and they'll be like, okay, so what does that feel like? And they'll be like, oh, it feels like shit. Like my chest is crumpling in, and like I want to disappear and die. And I'm like, okay, well, just breathe for a second. Say it again. See if you can accept that feeling. Like say it until those feelings don't really bother you anymore. You kind of desensitize yourself. It's not really desensitizing because you're not becoming numb to it. You're embracing it as like, you know, when you stub your toe, when you try and fight the pain and be like, oh, I hate this. This sucks. It makes it hurt more. But then when you put your attention on the pain and breathe into it, it doesn't hurt as much and it hurts for a less amount of time. It's the same thing with emotions. So if you say, I'm a creep or I'm a bad guy, and it brings up all these emotions, but you embrace them and breathe into them, they pass quicker than if you try and fight them and be like, oh no, they suck. So I help guys just embrace what they already think, already believe, and learn to love themselves, even though that's in there. And eventually, that part of you that believes that stops having a reason to believe it because it feels loved. It's like, yeah, okay, I feel like a creep and I love myself. I feel like a bad guy and I love myself. And then the final phase is the integration phase where it's like, okay, what do I actually think a creep is? By my own standards and values, what do I believe a bad guy really is? And then let me make sure that I can identify those behaviors that I actually disagree with and that I actually think are bad. And then if I'm telling myself that I'm a creep or a bad guy, I can be like, okay, did I do those things I actually think are bad? If yes, let me change my behavior. If no, well then I'm just calling myself names to keep myself small, in which case I need a little bit of love. I need to, express a little bit more of these emotions, clear out some internal space, fill that up with positive things and tell myself that I'm great and amazing and desirable and lovable. And eventually you flip the momentum and you start believing that you are the good guy who's worthy of these good things. And the old narrative stops being so scary.
I love it. It's like, embrace the creep. This is great.
Yeah.
I have so many students that are like, I just don't want to be creepy, so I'm not going to do anything. And I'm like, well, you're only creepy if you feel like you're creepy. So now that makes so much sense. So you embrace the creepy, like, yes, I'm creepy. It's okay.
Yeah. And I did a YouTube video about this a few years ago where it's like the creep is just unintegrated desire. It's the part of you that knows what you want, but is afraid to say it.
Yes.
And so you come off creepy.
Yes.
Because it's like you're talking to the woman and she knows you want something. She can feel it.
Yeah.
But the way you're showing up isn't congruent. So she knows you want something, but you're acting like you don't. And so it's just like, okay, what are you hiding, bro? Why are you being weird about this?
Yeah. Yeah. I say the same thing. Like, being creepy is just when you're not being direct. Like, just ask for what you want and then it's not creepy. She could say yes or no. But if you're like, hey, I just wanted to see how your day was going. It's like, it's creepy. Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about it, is being afraid of the no and trying to avoid it will actually get you more no's. But embracing the possibility of a no and being okay with that actually leads to more yeses.
It's a weird thing, isn't it?
Very weird.
Love it. So tell me a little bit about how people can find you, how they can work with you, and what working with you would look like. Well, we saw a little bit, but like, what's the timeline?
Yeah. So it really depends on the person. For people who are a little bit more kind of self-aware and used to doing internal work, you can see your whole life change in a matter of months. Like, I just had a client from Sweden, And he's really in tune with himself. He's able to do this kind of emotional work. And it took him like 2 weeks to suddenly be like magnetic to the women in his life.
Whoa.
And so he's actually working with me to help develop a course to teach guys what he did. And so that's going to be coming out soon. It's going to be called The Good Bad Guy. I was just talking to him about it this morning.
Like it?
Yeah. So, but there's other guys where it's like, if you're a little bit more cerebral, you might have to take a little bit of time to get into your body a little bit more, get comfortable with your emotions, and then learn how to skillfully use them. So there can be a learning curve, but it's usually not that big of a deal. I'm generally pretty good at walking people through and meeting them where they're at. And so if you do want to find me, my main source is from Instagram, where you can find me on Operation_Moksha, which is MOKSHA. Facebook's just my name, Chris Orozco. I just hired someone to do my Twitters. Twitter's blowing up. It's Operation Moksha without the underscore. YouTube, Operation Moksha. I just hired people to do my YouTube, so that I got really good content on my YouTube now.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So like what I do is I help people like a lot in the logistics, like the mechanics, the mechanics of dating, and the mechanics help people a lot to kind of get out of their own way, because all they have to do is just follow direction without overthinking, Totally. But sometimes people get stuck in like, I don't want to take the action because I'm having this narrative going on in my mind. Yeah. So this is really cool that you do this work. And in my own history have done some shadow work, and actually had a little phase where I was like embracing the shadow. I would call myself Bad Emily. It was really interesting to embrace it. And it had a lot to do with sexuality and things that had been repressed for me. And I've been in a really long relationship. So bringing that out, like even 7 years into the relationship at the time, was an interesting thing, and so I think this can happen. This type of work can happen at any point, whether you're single or not. Do you work mainly with like men? Do you work with women? Do you work with?
I'll work with anybody.
Cool.
Because I try to work with the personality on the most fundamental level that I can find. And I find that the deeper and more fundamental you go, the more similar we are than different. So the main concepts apply to everyone. It just really depends on how you want to go about using them. Most of my clients, when it comes to this sort of stuff, are men, because men are kind of really needing help stepping into their masculine energy. And there's not a lot of, there's like people that can teach you certain elements of it, but as far as the actual locating and integration of the energy itself, so that you can be just an embodiment of masculine energy rather than someone doing things that masculine guys do and like playing the role, but actually being the embodiment of it. I don't find that there's too many teachers that are good at leading you there. So that's where I try to help guys. With women, I have coached a bunch of women around this, but as of now, it's mostly guys coming to me.
The last takeaway, what is your major takeaway for single men that need to feel like a little bit more confident, and maybe it's because of this shadow side?
Put yourself first. You genuinely loving and enjoying your life is going to be way more attractive than any tips or tricks or strategies or anything you try to do from the perspective of like getting the girl being your top priority. If getting the girl is your literal top priority in life, you will probably repel most of the women that you want. But if you genuinely put yourself and your life and your satisfaction and your ability to create a life that you love, if you genuinely put that first and create something for yourself that you love, you will find that the women will come to you in a way that is surprising and shocking. So put yourself first, really learn to embody that, and then find that everything you want is just there waiting for you.
I love it. I love it so much, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys know where to find him. I'm going to link all of your stuff below so you can watch his YouTubes or check him out on Twitter or Instagram or all the places. But yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing. I think it's so important. And I love your posts on Facebook. So if you're not following this guy on Facebook, make sure you do, because he's got good golden nuggets on there.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here. I love this conversation. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure.